The Democratic Party has hit their lowest popularity in more than a generation. According to new polling from NBC News, only about 27% of registered voters have a positive view of the Democratic Party. That is the lowest number in the history of NBC News's poll, which goes back to 1990. Of those polled, only 7% said they had a very positive view of the Democrats. This poll is an absolute disaster, but unfortunately, it is one of their own making. Why is that? I'll get into that in a minute, but first, I want to go to Democratic pollster Jeff Horwitt of Hart Research Associates, who conducted this research, along with GOP pollster Bill McInturff of Public Opinion Strategies. They told NBC News the data reflects a do or die moment for the Democratic Party. Quote, with these numbers, the Democratic Party is not in need of a rebrand. It needs to be rebooted. Rebooted. Wow. Perhaps, hopefully, into a party that represents working class voters and not the giant corporate donors. That would be nice, wouldn't it? That said, one of the problems here is that Democrats, because I think of the corporate donations and all that stuff, they have been attempting to court so-called moderate voters. You know, the moderate Republicans in the suburbs. And how they've been doing that by showing how right-wing and bipartisan they are, by collaborating with Republicans. Now, that's not popular with the Democratic base, okay? And it gets you no additional Republican voters, as we've seen in this election and as we saw back in 2016, okay? Did not get any additional so-called moderate Republicans, or at least the number was very negligible, okay? Not enough to actually win an election. I know. NBC News found that 65% of Democrats actually want congressional Democrats to stick to their positions. Imagine that. Even if it means stifling bipartisan progress. So 65%, about 2/3, are like, hey, you might actually want to fight Republicans. Stick to your guns. Only 32% believe in making compromise with President Trump to gain consensus on legislation. So, again, 2/3 are saying fight. Fight! Man, actually stand your ground for once. The leadership, however, seems intent on giving away the store. Okay? This poll comes after Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer had voted to advance a Republican-backed spending bill to avoid a government shutdown, which I agree, it would have been disastrous to have a government shutdown. But what was given to Trump and Musk was the ability to shut down parts of government they don't like, as well as giving Trump an $8 billion slush fund to do whatever he wants with. So they ceded their authority when it comes to, the purse, okay, and handed Trump even more power. And they thought, oh, this is a great idea. We're going to do this because the government shutdown would be worse. Donald Trump's already shutting down parts of the government. So, I mean, absolutely disastrous, right? And members of the Democratic Party, by the way, did fight against that. I mean, you had Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on Thursday telling a CNN that Schumer has installed a, quote, deep sense of outrage and betrayal from members of his own party. And now you've got open talk of replacing Schumer, running a primary challenge. You got donors out there saying, hey, you know what? AOC, go get him. Now you have Senator Chris Murphy also saying that while he'll continue to stand behind the minority leader, Democrats can no longer stick to the status quo. Quote, if we continue to observe norms, if we continue to engage in business as usual, this democracy could be gone, he told Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker on Sunday. I don't think we have a year to save American democracy. I think the way the president is acting puts our democracy at immediate risk. But, okay, that's great and all, but if you're not going to, if you're still saying, I'm going to stand behind Schumer, then you're not ready to have this fight. Sorry, Chris. Look, one of the big problems here with the Democrats is that their leadership is completely disconnected from the people that it is supposed to represent. Democratic voters actually do want fighters. However, what we have in leadership are not fighters. You have Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries don't have the stomach for this fight. When asked if it is time for Senate leadership to change, Jeffries told reporters, "Next question. Oh, not going to even entertain it. They don't want to talk about it. Why? Democratic Party is currently more concerned about seniority than actually being an opposition party, than selecting people who are best for the job. And this is not a new problem. It's a problem we've had for a long time. I remember one of the biggest high-profile parts, and let's be honest, this idea probably went back even further, but 2016. I remember hearing everybody say, well, it's Hillary Clinton's turn. It's her turn. It's her turn. She's got to be the nominee. How dare anyone who challenges her? Okay, it's her turn. That election was seen largely as a referendum on the status quo. And Democrats, because it was her turn, picked the most status quo establishment figure they could. And guess what? They lost to Donald Trump. And then they did it again in 2020. Now, this time, of course, it was Joe Biden's turn. It was Biden's turn. But thanks to Donald Trump's massive failures, Biden did win. Okay. Messing up the economy. COVID. It was an absolute disaster. Okay. But then in 2024, it was Kamala's turn. So, we couldn't actually have a real primary. And so, we see where that went. Even in Congress, especially in Congress, this is how they do things. AOC, for example, versus Jerry Connolly for the House Oversight Committee. Well, it was Jerry's turn. We had to give it to him. Jerry's turn. He put in his time. It was Hakeem Jeffries' turn to become minority leader. Because he was behind Nancy Pelosi. So obviously it's his turn. We had to give it to him. Of course. Now, it's not the fact that seniority is the only factor in Democratic leadership, right? No, one of the biggest factors, along with seniority, is being able to raise money from corporations. So you have to know how to raise money from billionaires and corporations in order to get high up on leadership in the Democratic Party. And so that really explains why the Democrats are so weak against Donald Trump. Leadership is paid to be weak. That's it. Look, Schumer wouldn't risk a shutdown because the donors didn't want that. They're already losing in the stock market right now. So the donors are like, whoa, the shutdown would be even worse for us. So no, Schumer, don't do that. Don't do that. And look, the Democratic Party will not fight Trump on a lot of these things because they don't know how to fight or are told not to fight because that might have a negative effect on the markets. And this is why the Democrats have not elevated their strongest voices to be leaders of the party. AOC, Bernie Sanders, who I know he's an independent, right? Tim Walz, Jasmine Crockett. They're all out there, by the way, challenging Republicans. They're doing town halls in Republican districts. Tim Walz. Bernie Sanders is doing a fight oligarchy tour. AOC, by the way, is about to join Bernie Sanders on that tour. Okay. And Walz is talking about how, hey, we shouldn't just be doing the ACA. We actually need to be promoting, universal health care, like Medicare for all. And you know what? That's getting record numbers of people to show up. Because they're actually showing up and are willing to fight. But then you get these so-called, moderates. You get Shaheen, Fetterman, Slotkin. They're just out there helping Republicans instead of fighting Republicans. I mean, if anything, this should be a come to Jesus moment for Democratic voters. Okay. I mean, you got to vote in primaries, not for the person whose turn it is, but for the strongest candidate, the progressive candidate. Look, appealing to the so-called moderate middle has absolutely failed. Because this is what you get from the so-called moderate middle. People who don't fight at all. But, of course, that does mean admitting that people like Bernie Sanders and AOC were right the entire time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon in order to get notified whenever a new video is released. And if you want to support independent, progressive media through this difficult time where it seems like everybody is shutting down, you can become a member on our YouTube page, you can become a subscriber on Facebook, or you can go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Thank you.